Hi guys, and welcome back to SwitchUp. We're going to take a look at the newly released Ninjala. It is Ninjala and not Ninjala like I thought it was. Have a look at how the single player works, as well as the online battle royale and team game modes. We'll go through the performance of the title so far, and I'll give you an early unscored review impression of the game. Is this one the upon? Let's find out. First things first, I have to say the game targets a 60 frames per second, but doesn't achieve it. Now there are times when it's a fluid 60, but for the majority of the playtime you're looking at around about 50 to 55 FPS, and it seems to have very good frame pacing. What this means then is that you have a very smooth experience, and for the most part I didn't notice many major stutters or dips, other than when you're in the training area and the game begins to load in, and just before you enter your game you'll see a few real major drops in performance, but I believe this to be more to do with network latency as it brings together all the players. The overall visual palette and style is very similar to a certain Nintendo franchise which we all know and love, Splatoon, and in all honesty I'm quite surprised that Nintendo haven't been a bit more protective, shall we say, of that IP, as this really does have so many similarities, even down to the more restricted palette of game types that are available. Character designs as well look stripped straight out of Splatoon, and I have to be honest, they've done an excellent job. This isn't a cheap, lazy copy. This is a title that quite obviously takes its inspiration from something it loves, and it puts the effort into making everything look exactly right. When you begin a round, you'll see the character line up and they'll pull poses, and almost certainly your deja vu will be real. You'll control your character with the left stick in terms of their movement around the map, and the right stick will control the camera unless you select the gyro aiming. And this is an excellent implementation. Now I think the dead zone is a touch too small, as you will from time to time begin to drift up or down, but you can click in the left stick to recenter the camera, and this really works just fine even in the heat of action. Why might you want gyro in this when you're not shooting and it's mainly melee based? Well, it allows you to quickly flick the camera and look behind you, but also when you're blowing up a bubble to fire at an enemy, this can be aimed manually. Clicking in the right stick will lock on to the nearest character, but I did find this mechanic slightly wonky at the moment. It can be difficult to switch between the elements that you actually want to target, and you may find yourself stuck looking at an opponent that's on the other side of the map. The different weapons that you have available to you have nice designs, and each will carry its own stats and abilities. Now understandably, performance in this smaller arena with the 8 players is mostly excellent, but what's it like when you head over to the single player story campaign? Well, it's decent, it's not bad at all. What I will say is you do have to purchase the campaign. It's around about £3.50, which doesn't seem a great deal, but there are many payment systems in place here, but in my short playtime so far, none of them felt entirely essential. And the game does give new players who sign up in the next few days a little bit of the currency to make a purchase. I guess my main takeaway in terms of performance so far is that everything's just slick and it's very well polished. Textures, although obviously not meant to be super crispy, look very clean and clear, and there's a good contrast between the different colours they've used. The edges of items have a decent amount of anti-aliasing. I didn't notice a huge amount of jaggy edges, and it looks to me like everything is running near native, as the images are just crisp and clear, and this remains in handheld mode as well, which is nice. One of the biggest performance issues the game's seen so far has been the servers and the connectivity. Now if you picked up the game on launch day, you'll have noticed some serious issues, which is a shame as they really should have worked this out when they did their beta. While things have been much better today, it's certainly not a quick game to jump into, although they've done quite a good job of disguising the loading that's going on in the background by giving you a training area to, well, train in. You may be waiting 2 or 3 minutes before the actual game begins. The levels and stages themselves are also quite well designed, but that first story area is actually deceptively small, and the content on offer there, yeah, it's very much, again, like Splatoon, in that it's just really designed to train the player for heading online. There are some lovely comic panel sections which are beautifully, I say illustrated, I think it actually is a slightly clever use of 3D models with some filters over the top, but either way it looks really good, and the dialogue is quite comical. It's a nice way of presenting story. So in terms of performance, it's a good job overall. 60 FPS, nearly, slick, crisp graphics, a good deal of control options including gyroscopic aiming, you can select different lock-on options, and obviously customizing controls is now possible in any game using the default systems if the game doesn't support it, so overall not bad at all in that department. Audio is excellent. Sound effects and music are on point really for this style of game, and as you progress and win rounds you'll unlock new BGM tracks for use in your rounds. The character customization is pretty limited, there's no two ways about it, selecting a few different hairstyles and some colour options, but the real customization comes in the form of gear and unlocks, and we'll talk a little bit about that in my review impressions. The first of the game modes is Battle Royale, and this pits you against a few other players. I believe it's 8 in total. You'll have chosen your weapon and customized your loadout, which essentially amounts to choosing a weapon of a different speed and damage type, with the heavier, slower clubs and hammers causing much more damage, but they'll also slow your player and your movement a touch, whereas the fast and nimble types will allow you to even warp from one side of the enemy to the other while doing swift damage, but they're much weaker. Each of these may have their own abilities, accessible with the X and Y buttons, and these charge up as you play through the title. Your main attack will be with a ZR trigger, which I initially found slightly unusual, but I guess it's very similar to a first-person shooter title, or indeed a certain other game, and it works well enough. In actual fact, the gameplay reminded me a little bit more of Naruto, which we reviewed on the channel, and it has that feel about it. You'll be locking onto generally a single enemy or couple, and much of the combat takes place in the air. You have the ability to quick dash in any direction, but this will use your stored up points, which is shown here, as will every other move that you gradually build up. Now, some of these have a cooldown, but you have a break move as well, where if a player is in a certain state, you can break that, allowing for an opening where you can then attack. I found it quite difficult to break the enemy's attacks when they're against you, and there are often times where there's literally nothing you can do and you will die. And someone said on Twitter it's about being smart, so I believe what they're trying to say is you can be quite tactical. You can go to a fight that's already in place and then take out both guys just as their health bar's down. You can use your bubblegum to fire at an enemy to lock them into place and then take them out. You can hide using a stealth button which disguises you as an in-game object and then attack from behind. You can run up walls and then launch from above, so really it's just about being a little bit smarter with the way that you play. It's no good spamming buttons in this one and wondering why you're getting destroyed, and I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty much what I was doing at the start. As with any arena style brawler, as time goes on, different classes and setups will rise to the top as more powerful, but as it stands right now, there's a good mixture in terms of the weapons being used online, and I found that actually the slower hammer was working well for me. Whereas I did see a lot of players using that faster drill weapon, and even some using the donuts. I'm quite impressed by how well balanced it actually feels at this early stage, but I'm not convinced just yet how that balancing is going to pan out over time, and whether or not a strategy will emerge that can essentially allow you to cheese to get some easy wins. I'm not sure, but I'm sure we'll see, and it feels to me so far to be really quite an enjoyable experience, particularly for a free title. Now, the gameplay is also a bit of a balancing act of powering up your character by destroying these drones. As you destroy them, you build up the power to then be able to either launch more of your attacks and do different moves which use up that power, or as you gradually store it up, you can then create a giant weapon, which is devastating. If you're on the receiving end of these things, it's being very tactical, and choosing when to make a tactical retreat becomes a big part of getting good at the game. Now, when you get to the end of a round, if you're not one of the top 3 players, well, you're going to feel a little bit sad. But there's also a strange twist that I'm not sure if I like or not. The game will randomly, and I mean literally random spinner, dish out some points, and you may find that that hard-earned first position suddenly becomes a second or third. It's a strange choice, and I'm not sure if I like that. There were at least 2 times when I got a frustrating 3rd to 4th demotion, but I was quite pleasantly surprised by the amount of rewards the game gives you without you having to pay. These generally take the form of different skins for the weapons that are available, but there is a battle pass of sorts here, as you'd expect, to give more to those players that buy into it. After the horrific beta launch, I wasn't expecting much, but this is a fun and enjoyable title and well worth you picking up for nothing, and we'll see where it goes. I've got a feeling it's going to build quite a large following. It has the feeling of a title that's way more refined than first meets the eye, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting good. Let me know down in the comments if you picked this one up, if it interests you, and as always, a big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month. Do leave a comment down below, and for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!